Hey everybody, it is DDO Players, and we are privileged today to speak with Mr. Chris Birch of Modiphius Entertainment.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm all right on a sunny day in London.
That's right, we had to play some international time zone tag here to find a good time to record, so thank you for taking some time out of your day here.
That's all right.
Let's get started by, I know you have a pretty varied history in the RPG and the tabletop game community. You just want to speak a little bit about your history?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in the music business before, and then I was doing PR for video games and doing big dance parties with rave DJs. But I was always a gamer since I was a kid. I played Ogre, the Steve Jackson little hex war game,
right,
when I was about 8, 9. Discovered it in a knitting shop in Gloucester in the UK.
That's awesome.
As you do. I just had a wall of games at the back. It was really bizarre. And then, of course, my brother and his girlfriend got me playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was about 9. And then I got into war games as a teen. And my brother, who played sometimes, he moved away to college, and so I was kind of just constantly playing games on my own. So I'd figure out lots of solo rules and how to play versus myself, playing one side then the other, and I developed lots of game ideas as well. And then when I was in London, I kind of met a friend, Stuart Newman, who everyone's got those friends that you sit up all night drinking Diet Coke and eating pizzas, dreaming up cool gaming worlds and ideas. And we'd play massive games of 40k or Epic. We rewrote the rules for Epic so that we could literally use his entire collection, which was phenomenal. Because I just love the idea. Why can't you put everything on the table? I want to play it in 4 hours, not 17 hours.
Right, so, exactly.
So we just had all kinds of fun, and we wrote a game idea that I pitched to Mike Pondsmith when I met him a few years later. Which was terrible. But we ended up producing the Starblazer Adventures role-playing game for Cubicle 7, and I was kind of helping them do the deal for Doctor Who, the role-playing game at the time, because I was doing a lot of licensing deals as part of my business, and so I knew the BBC people, and we got a deal going. And at the same time, I had a fashion label doing video games T-shirts called Joystick Junkies, and I was working on deal with Starblazer, the British comic that was a kind of all-in-one story in one comic. And it was all black and white, but it was a lot of early artists that would go on to work on 2000 AD, and it had beautiful Chris Foss-style sci-fi art on the covers, these awesome spaceships and things. So I said, well, you should use that for a game, and they said, well, why don't you do it? And it took me 3 painful years, but eventually I finished it with Stuart, and came out. It was a big success, and got lots of recognition. And but there was never really any money in it, and it was only when I got bored of doing T-shirts after 13 years in the business as a designer, and I decided to look for something new to do, and thought, maybe I'll go back to games because I really love doing that, and maybe we'll make enough money to spend a day a week doing it instead of going to the office. And I was working with my wife, and we just got married, and thought we'd change our life. And Kickstarter started up and came along to England, and we had been working on this idea for Acton Cthulhu, the World War II universe, and had sold a couple of PDFs and built up a little fan base, and we put it on Kickstarter, and it was a ridiculously big success. And that's
yes, it was.
How we got started. So as a gaming background, I've kind of gone the gamut of, I love my hex war games, the old school, what you would just call fantasy games,
right?
Which could have been sci-fi or fantasy or whatever. All the kind of people out there, old school, know things like Starfire and Barbarian Prince and Dragon Rage, and so many brilliant old little games. Mayday, the Traveller hex game, running around ships, and Azanti High Lightning, which was the game that had something like 50 square miles of hex-based maps of all these levels of this gigantic shit, and just a few counters. So there were some brilliant games, and then also role-playing games. I was after D&D, I went into Metamorphosis Alpha, Jim Ward's amazing, very lethal game, and Star Frontiers, which is a classic. and then just graduated through many different games and war games as well. I started off with 15mm Napoleonics, and then I started collecting unpainted D&D miniatures that my friends didn't want, and turned it into a war game, and then just built it from there, and just had a kind of all-round love for gaming and board games. Kind of the more traditional, sort of Euro and Ameritrash board games, obviously a more recent invention, and those have grown up over the last few years. And of course, Siege of the Citadel is probably one of the very first Ameritrash games, I'd say.
And speaking of that Siege of the Citadel, that Kickstarter is up and running now, and pretty much blew up, I think it's safe to say, is the way you can describe that. As we record this, you have 8 days left, and you are at 402% of your goal. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Fastly breaking down all of your stretch goals. So you want to talk about Siege of the Citadel just a little bit here?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it came shortly after Space Crusade and Hero Quest, if people know that. So it was a big box of plastic cool monsters and marines based on the Mutant Chronicles universe that was, back in the 90s, was enormous. There was the video game, the SNES video game, Doom Trooper. There was the Doom Trooper card game that was translated in 16 languages. There was the Warzone miniature game. There was the Mutant Chronicles role-playing game. There was the acclaimed comic book line. There's later on a movie and all kinds of stuff. So it was massive. And so they did this. They did a couple of other board games. They did Blood Berets, like set in a jungle. And then they did Siege of the Citadel was followed on from the big success of games like Space Crusade, and was a TV advertised, mainstream board game. Lots of creatures, lots of heroes, lots of new, unusual dice, this giant sort of plastic raised stairwell and floor tile that really actually had no game effect, but just looked really cool.
This looks awesome.
Yeah, and then this giant slot-together Citadel walls that towered over the game that, again, really had no game effect except to mark the points of entry for enemy reinforcement. So it had a use, and it looked brilliant. It was just like, wow, look at that. And so it really raised a lot of profile, and for the Mutant Chronicles game, out of like 300 playtesters, about 250 of them still had multiple copies of the game. So most people had one, some people had 2, 3, even 10 copies of the game because they loved it so much and they didn't want to lose the copies. So it's got a huge amount of love for the game, and has a huge universe behind it that's very well developed. And when we relaunched the Mutant Chronicles role-playing game on Kickstarter a couple of years ago, we've now got 17 books in the line.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's a whole storyline that has grown up and existed already, and we've kind of drew it all together and filled in some of the gaps and unveiled a lot of secrets that they didn't talk about back then. So it's got a very, very deep storyline. So we've got, when we're building the stretch goals, obviously we've got loads and loads and loads of information and stuff already created to draw on, which is cool.
So Siege of the Citadel is a reboot of the classic 90s game. How did you decide to reboot the classic game?
So, well, it was Richard Borg was involved in the original design. So it was Target Games that developed the original game rules and ideas. And Richard Borg, he was working at Pressman Toys, and he took the MAD concepts and simplified it into a much more straightforward game, less complex, more aimed at a sort of mainstream audience. And that's why we've got these really unique, beautiful rules. It was very, very advanced for its time back in the 90s. And games have obviously evolved a lot since then, but people still love the game and they still play it a lot. So we've taken the original game rules. A lot of them haven't changed because they just work. But then we've added to them, we've added this new kind of character, like a tech-based character who can interact with the scenery, the technology. He can stop traps working. He can take over turrets. He can do all kinds of cool stuff. We've added in new ways of playing. rebooting. We've changed some of the rules around to balance it better. So we've basically kind of evolved the game around the same structure, just based on kind of 20 years of games design experience. And Richard Borg's back involved. He's overseeing the redesign. And we've also got Kevin Wilson and Eric Lang, who are long-time fans since they were kids of the game. And they're involved in reviewing the design changes in the core game. And they're also working on some mini campaigns themselves. And then we've got Jay Little, who's also a super fan. He's even got 3 copies of the game, and he's working on the Lunar City expansion, which changes the game again. It adds in lots of new difficulties and extra levels of play. So it was an easy thing to reboot, because you had such a great game to start with. You weren't starting with a game that was like, well, this is broken.
Right, yeah.
It was already a game that people love a lot. And I mean, the funny thing is in the playtest, we were getting feedback. Oh, this rule doesn't work. It's like, well, actually, that's in the original game. Yeah, why have you changed this? No, we haven't changed it. That is actually how it was played. Oh, okay. So there's lots of, people, when you have such a passionately loved thing like this, people have it. It's like Monopoly. Monopoly is mostly played wrong. Because families grow up going, well, this is how you play, and you don't bother reading the rules because everyone knows how to play it. But most people play it wrong. So, most people forget that when you decide not to buy a street that you land on, you're supposed to auction it to everyone else. So, and that's why the game takes 3 times as long as it should. When it should actually play quite quickly. And so there's lots of little things, and people remember it in a certain way, and it's like, no, you can't change that. And so obviously it's good and bad, because you've got to manage people's expectations and, keep the fans on board, but also show to people who've never heard of Siege of the Citadel, this is an awesome game, it's going to have all the stuff that you expect in it, and it's going to be better than that as well.
So you're no stranger to Kickstarter, as you kind of alluded to earlier, but it seems like this Kickstarter, just as I said before, blew up entirely, and it just took Kickstarter by storm. What do you think of the reaction that you guys are getting to this Siege of the Citadel?
Very good. I mean, it's not the biggest one we've done so far, but we're hoping that it will be, and it's growing fast. I think a lot of people found it unusual because we have a way of doing our Kickstarters where we have our standard pledges, but we always have a pledge that isn't worth the money at the beginning. And for me, we use Kickstarter to we are probably more prepared than a lot of people when they come to Kickstarter. We have a lot of art and sculpts and things. Some companies come to Kickstarter with pretty much a finished box. They literally are waiting for the orders. We tend to still evolve the game as we go. So we haven't shown off the rules yet because we're still working on it, and we won't show them off until we're ready. And there's lots of things we still haven't showed off. A lot of the sculpts aren't ready yet because they're still being developed as we go, and that's part of what the Kickstarter is here to pay for. And we've got lots of artwork to show. And we have this pledge, which is $149, that right at the beginning wasn't worth $149. So why on earth would you back it? But there was a pledge that was $69, and the base game is going to be 80 to 90 in retail, and it had a load of extras. So already it was worth money. And people know from our previous Kickstarters, like for example, in the Conan Kickstarter, there was a £40 PDF master pledge, which gets you all the unlocked books in PDF. But there were no unlocked books in PDF at the beginning. So why would you buy that? Well, if you know our Kickstarters, you know it's going to be worth about 5 to 10 times that much once we've finished. And yes, the £40 PDF master ended up getting you 20 new Conan 2D20 books. Plus it got you about 30 old D20 Conan books as well as a bonus. So people got about 50 books for £40, $60, which is a pretty amazing value. And we did exactly the same thing with Siege of the Citadel. And it's a slightly different audience, a miniatures audience. There was a lot of people like, but why can't you just unlock everything and show us it all and give us everything at the beginning? And we're quite careful. We don't promise anything that we can't deliver. So we always give amazing value for money. We always deliver what we promise. So we just said, well, look, just take the cool deal for the base game. But now that $149 pledge is now worth over $255. So because we've gradually unlocked stretch goal after stretch goal, because we always like giving people much more value than they bargained for. So our thing is like, look, we're still developing the game. Trust us. Have faith in us with this pledge, and we're going to make it way better than you can imagine. And it always, always works. So our goal is to make that $149 pledge worth somewhere between $400 and $500 in 9 days' time. Because we can, as people help us unlock stuff. And sometimes it takes time to get going. But I think what we've seen is we've actually had a very solid growth through the Kickstarter. People have been just gradually backing us. We've not had any real drop-offs, and it's been a just sort of steady haul. And we're not in a race to have the biggest Kickstarter ever, and I just want to make a really solid game. I'm not going to be rushed. And there are some people that just want to see everything. I want all the rules now. I want to see everything. Why haven't you finished everything? Because that's why we're on Kickstarter, to help finish everything. And we'd rather just get our heads down and make a brilliant game that plays really well. And, we've got this amazing A-list design team who are behind us, who are helping ensure that game is going to be a testament to the original, but is going to blow away a new gaming generation. And as people see all the sculpts and designs that are coming through, I think they'll agree that it's going to be quite an incredible journey.
And I know this is kind of early to ask this question, but when are you hoping to deliver this? I mean, I realize there can be delays or whatever, but what's your goal?
We actually put down October next year, which is actually quite far out from what I think it will be, but Kickstarter is always delayed. Our Conan Kickstarter is a bit delayed, our Infinity one is a bit delayed, because it happens, especially when, with role-playing games particularly, we've got something like about 30 to 40 people working on each role-playing game, and you cannot help but have people's lives get in the way, because it's gaming. We're not a Citibank that pay a fortune for people just to make sure it happens. We're a gaming company. People do stuff for love, and so you have to be. And so we can't pay the Citibank rates. We're paying people to work on games that we all love. We're all doing this for the love of it, not for the bucks. And so you've got to give people time to sort their life out and work with them, and that's why often delays creep in. With the board games, with Thunderbirds, we delivered, I believe, it was a month late on our schedule last year for the base game, and then the supplements, the sort of expansions, were about 2.5 months late. So and partly because the rules weren't ready, and we said, look, guys, we're just going to hold on until we're happy with the rules, because we want to make sure that I often say, I'd rather you be annoyed with me for 3 months, 6 months, and happy for life.
Right.
Rather than be happy for a couple of months until you get the box and then be annoyed with me for life, because I sold you a dud. So it's always, for us, quality is always first, and we always deliver whether it's late or not. But we do make sure that you're getting really good value for money, stupid value, really, I'd like to think, and that it's a really solid game and beautiful artwork and good quality.
And let's switch gears totally here, going from the Siege of the Citadel Kickstarter into something you announced right before Gen Con of this year, and that is your new Star Trek RPG.
Yeah.
Can you quick describe for us exactly what this Star Trek RPG is going to be like?
So it's the fourth Star Trek role-playing game to come out. There hasn't been one for about, I think it was the last actual book released was around 2005, but the actual core book was sometime before that.
Yeah, I was trying to think, and it's been a long time since we've had a Star Trek RPG.
Yeah. And obviously the opportunity came up to us having done a lot of hard work, a lot of research and talking to people and pitches. And we wanted to create, we're not using photos, it's all graphic novel art. It's going to be a very authentic Star Trek. We've got a really great team involved who are, for example, editors of some of the big Star Trek novels. We've got a major writer who's written 25 Star Trek novels So these people really know their stuff. Plus, we've got writers from all the previous editions of the role-playing game, plus other really big-known writers from other gaming lines who are all jumping at the chance to get involved in a childhood dream, really. It's like Star Wars, who wouldn't want to do Star Wars? And it's the same thing with Star Trek. When I grew up with Captain Kirk episodes on BBC Two as a kid in the UK. And it's a real challenge because it's a huge amount of work, and it's going to be amazing. We are showing Star Trek from a different light. The books are going to be much more personal stories. So there's no point giving everyone yet another 200 pages of content about Star Trek that they've already got in previous games or previous Star Trek books. Of course, there's going to be a new audience picking this up. But we don't want to just repeat stuff people have got. So we've got this new approach, which is, let's say there's a chapter on Starfleet, and what is Starfleet and what are they like? So yes, we're going to have the sort of the kind of cadet introduction to Starfleet, but we're going to have a lot of reports and communiques and secret intelligence documents talking about Starfleet from different people's perspective. There might be a Klingon agent, a Romulan diplomat, a Andorian ship captain, all with what they've discovered about Starfleet, what their opinion is of Starfleet. And those are going to be linked to previous films or episodes. So there's going to be lots of little plot seeds and interesting kind of, if you know your Star Trek, you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, that's from that episode. So there's lots of cool stuff that's coming out that shows Star Trek in a different light. Because I often feel that Star Trek is about the people and the ship, whereas Star Wars is more about the Empire and the rebellion and the last stand that the heroes will often have to make. Whereas Star Trek is very personal, it's people's views, and so we're going to discover what different people think about Star Trek. So maybe the ship descriptions are going to have a Klingon report about the weaknesses of this ship, or a Romulan report on how to avoid it, So there's going to be a lot more insight into why is Starfleet so amazing or interesting, because of what all these people think. And so that's going to be repeated through the book. We're going to have a lot more insight into the world of Star Trek in that way. It's going to mostly be set just before the Dominion War, but you'll also be able to play in classic Star Trek era. And it covers everything up to and including the Picard films and Voyager. Doesn't include the new reboot films, because you've already got Kirk covered in the game, and it doesn't include the new series yet either. So at the moment it's very focused, and the Picard era is like the most popular in all the research, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it. And then the game is very fast playing. It uses a stripped down version of our 2D20 system, which we've used in Conan, Music Chronicles and Infinity. It's our kind of house system. And again, it brings out the personal side of Star Trek more. So all the characters have what you might call beliefs. It might be something like technology will always save us, or all Klingons are evil, or the Prime Directive is never wrong. And of course we know that in Star Trek that often gets challenged. Kirk often finds a way to break the Prime Directive. Picard finds a way to get around it without breaking it. And it's often through those personal relationships in Star Trek that people grow, that the conflict of beliefs and the conflict of people's loyalties is often brought to the fore in Star Trek, and that's how we see people change. And so for your character is going to change and evolve as you confront those beliefs and deal with them in the adventures. So we've got some really, really great ways of how that is being brought into the game. We've dealt with phasers and the kind of one-shot kill issue of Star Trek. One of our lead writers is Dave Chapman, who worked on Doctor Who for Cubicle 7 as well. He's working alongside Nathan Dowdle, who's our lead developer as well. So we've got a really great team working on the rule system to make sure it feels like Star Trek, and it it has this sort of evocative nature. And we had a great playtest the other night where they were on a mission on an alien planet, and everyone had such a good time. And it was actually a game of 8 players with Nathan that we recorded, and it worked really well. And it played fast. Everyone felt like they were involved. And the other cool thing is, let's say you're all playing bridge crew, and you can start as ensigns and lower down. But we actually had a bridge crew, and when they decided who was going to go down onto the planet, anyone who didn't go onto the planet took a secondary character. So they're still involved in the action on the planet, but when the Jem'Hadar ship turns up in orbit, they're still on the ship so that they can take action then. So everyone is involved in the action all the time. And that works really well. And these secondary characters can be improved. But if you lose them, then there are consequences as well. You can't just go, well, this is canon fodder. It doesn't matter if they die.
Your typical red shirt.
Yeah, that's right. Well, not obviously in Next Generation, it's a different colour. So I keep being reminded of that.
Yeah, it sounds like this is pretty open-ended then. So is it going to be easy for a player to create adventures in it?
Oh, totally. And you know what? We're already steaming ahead with commissioning lots of adventures, because there's one thing role-playing games often suffer from is not having enough adventures. And actually, the playtest is going to be really fun. So playtesting starts sign-ups in a week or two's time. You're going to be able to pick one of 4 ships to be on in the playtest. And each playtest group is going to have a different experience, because you're going to be getting different missions depending on which ship you pick. There's a Voyager-style ship. There's a Enterprise-style ship, like the Galaxy class. There's an Akira class, which is more of a warship. There is the Lexington, which is an old Constitution class back in history. And they're playing a totally different perspective on the whole storyline. So we've got all these playtest adventures and missions that are being written so that each ship is going to experience the Star Trek playtest from a different perspective. Like the Voyager style ship is going to get more science and exploration missions, whereas the Akira is going to get more conflict missions, the Galaxy class more cultural missions, and so on. And our overall plot team, based on the players' feedback, are going to be weaving the plot in different directions. And we have this great, really exciting plot developed by the story team that they're going to play through the whole playtest, which is a living campaign. So as the playtest reports come in, we're going to be changing the storyline based on all the different player groups. And we've got something like 5,000 groups signed up.
Wow.
Like Star Trek at the moment, so we can't wait to get that going.
And Star Trek is pretty much known for the different races that are in the show. So can you tell us what races you're going to have available to play, or are you kind of keeping that under the cuff for now?
I can't yet, because it's still being decided. So basically, obviously, you cannot put all the races in the core book, because
right, exactly,
take up a 1,000-page core book just for the racial bonuses alone. So we're picking races that are meaningful, that are different, that are important to the Star Trek universe, and then we're going to be introducing other races through various supplements. And we've got divisional supplements that are going to be focused on operations or science, for example, that are not just a player's book, they're a GM's book. So it basically says, okay, if you want to have science-orientated adventures and missions, this book is for you. It's more specific life path for the characters. It's more plot seeds for the GM. It's a lot more guidance for the players on what you should be doing as a player, as part of the crew. And for the GM is how to make sure the science people have a really awesome time. So they go home going, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I got to do this, this, and this. So it's a book designed to help both sides of the table make each other's time that much more enjoyable. There'll be more science ships, more gear, and races that are maybe more linked to the science careers. And that'll be repeated in each of the books. And then we've got quadrant books, like the Alpha Quadrant, etc., that expand on the core book content to have a lot more information on the world and planets and the politics and what you can expect. And then any particular races that are key to those quadrants, so that you can have them as playable characters.
So the big thing in RPGs right now is organized play for a particular RPG system. Do you envision having an organized league for Star Trek as well at some point?
Well, yes. So the living playtest is the beginning of that. So the plan is to finish this living campaign at probably Gen Con next year, and to kickstart the new living campaign and organised play that will be run through shops. So, for example, we're going to start a pre-order for Star Trek in January, and stores will be able to get involved with that through their distributors. They'll be able to run living campaign playtests in store. We're going to support them. They can list themselves as a star base on our map of where you can play Star Trek around the world. And through the pre-order, as more people pre-order, we're going to be putting more into the pre-order bundle. So there's a core book and a little box of stuff, and that box of stuff is going to get better and better the more pre-orders we get. Kind of like a Kickstarter, but just through our site, and we obviously want stores to be part of that as well.
Right.
And so this organised play is going to grow through the stores, and then as of Gen Con next year is when it really kicks off with an organised play schedule and kind of an online login system and lots of exciting stuff.
So at Gen Con this year, you were giving out the little Kirk and Picard miniatures for people that signed up for the living campaign. And I know a couple of people.
They were crazy.
Yes, they were. Your booth was crazy at Gen Con this year. Are those figures going to be available later for those that weren't able to attend? I know we've had that question asked a couple times.
We are doing them at the moment through the sign-up process at Essen and Dragon Meet in the UK.
Okay.
And then they may be, I think the plan is to include them. We're going to be slightly redesigning the figures, just changing some of the proportions a bit. So, but they will be later available as part of the crew sets. So there's the miniature sets that are coming are sets of 10, well, maybe 8 to 10 figures that are the Next Generation crew that you know, and then the Kirk crew that you know, the Deep Space Nine crew that you know, and then other types of, an away team in extreme weather clothing, that kind of stuff, or a Klingon boarding party. And we're doing these beautiful tiles. So the other cool thing is the core book comes with a chapter called Away Teams. And the idea with this is it's a very, very strict bound set of rules, so that, let's say there's just you and me turn up tonight, and we're like, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's play an away team mission. All right, so, okay, well, I'll be the Klingons. You take Kirk's crew. I'll try and capture McCoy, and we're going to play on the burning colony base tile set. So we can have a fun kind of battle mission played out really quickly with 10, 20 figures aside, and feel like we had a cool Star Trek experience, even though we didn't have the rest of the group here.
So is the game dependent on the miniatures, or are they just an optional?
No, the role-playing game isn't. It's
okay.
Our system doesn't even use squares or meters. It's like a zone-based system, a bit like Fate.
Okay.
So it totally doesn't need figures at all, but we know people love figures. A lot of people like to have a figure on the table, just so when the GM says, kind of, where are you in relation to each other? Okay, well, I'm here. Some people like having the tiles or drawing maps as they go. And some people just want to collect the figures. So it's kind of aimed at everyone. And I love figures as well, although I rarely use them in role-playing games. So it's, although I think we will with Star Trek. So.
And can you tell us when you're looking at launching this?
January is when the pre-order is going to start. So you want to get in on the pre-order. You'll be able to get it in shops, or you'll be able to get it at Gen Con. You'll be able to get it in shops after Gen Con. Stores are going to get involved in the pre-order, so you can go along and support your local friendly gaming store, and you will get exactly the same as what you'd get from our pre-order site, and you'll be supporting them. And the more people that order, the more you're going to get. Simple as that. We're aiming to put together some kind of cool little extra adventures and special bonuses for the people who pre-order. And those pre-orders, the aim is that will go out just before Gen Con.
So we have talked about the Star Trek RPG and the Siege of the Citadel's Kickstarter. What else is on tap for Modiphius Entertainment?
Well, we've got John Carter in development at the moment, which is an even more stripped-down version of the 2D20 system. With a role-playing game, a miniatures line, and we've got some beautiful miniatures being sculpted that we're showing off soon, and a board game to tie in with it. We've also got the Acton Cthulhu Skirmish miniatures game, which comes out alongside the Acton Cthulhu role-playing game in November. There's also a board game by Kevin Wilson that's kind of like Axis and Allies meets Defenders of the Realm, co-op war game, again set in the Acton Cthulhu universe, which is kind of our baby. And there's a lot more for Mutant Chronicles. There's a living campaign for Mutant Chronicles and for Acton Cthulhu kicking off at the end of this year. So yes, we've got our plates full, and there's Conan and Infinity being developed as we speak. So,
well, we look forward to seeing this and a lot more from you in the future, I am sure.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for taking some time out, Chris, and we will talk to you later.
All right, great. Thanks a lot.